The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Project Independence and You Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. I'm Rebecca Miller along with Otto Lohse. Good morning, Otto.
Good morning, Rebecca.
How are you? Beautiful day out today. If you're watching, you can see in the background that it's very bright. It's just a beautiful, beautiful Friday. And also we have Christina Liu, who is our radio show producer and also the Director of Senior Citizen Affairs for the town of North Hempstead's Department of Services for the Aging, Project Independence. And also, of course, Dan Cox, the Executive Director of Everything Good with WCWP Radio. Every week, Christina books really wonderful guests, and we learn so much. And today is obviously no different. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Pooja Shah. And Dr. Shah is the Assistant Professor at the Department of Dermatology, Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra, Northwell. And I know we're going to learn a lot about skin health for seniors. So we're really excited about that because, you know, one of the things we stress on our show is you're never too old to continue to take care of yourself. And that, you know, as we get older, there may be different ways we should be taking care of ourselves, different things we should be doing. But first, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I know this is your first experience on radio, and we're just glad that it's with us because this is more of kind of an open forum. You know, we're just kind of an round table, as Christina was saying. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to a fun conversation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you have a remarkable bio, and I know Otto is, you know, very interested in it. We all are. It's terrific. Your education, your background, when you came here, and all that you have accomplished and awards. And, you know, I'm so interested in a lot of the specialties that you mentioned also in your bio. But I know Otto is just itching to ask you questions about, you know, how and when you came here and your accomplishments and what that experience was like for you.
Well,
so I'm handing the baton to Mr. Otto Lohse.
Feeling. My parents came from Germany. I'm first generation. They came over here from a different kind of background than you, in the sense that back then in the 1920s, it was more of a poverty issue. You know, they lived on a farm and they going nowhere fast and in a small village. So they came here, but they had the barrier of not speaking the language and having no money when they got here.
Right.
But in your case, it's also, you know, my opinion is it's also a culture shock for anybody that comes to this country who came from another country. So I guess the question I have to start with is how old when you got here? And what was that like when it has nothing to do with dermatology, but,
Right.
but it's interesting, you know,
Yeah.
how old were you and what was it like? You know, how long did it take to kind of get acclimated?
Yeah. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with how I ended up where I am. So I think, you know, all of our backgrounds really do drive our kind of, you know, motivation, our motivation to succeed and, you know, to serve others based on the experiences we've had. And that's been, I think my background's played a huge role in where I am today. And, you know, I have to thank my parents and my brother for it really. So I was 10 years old when I moved, and I'm the state of Gujarat in India. And, you know, I was from a pretty, I'd say like middle-class family in India. My mom was actually a family medicine physician in India. She used to work for the government. So when I grew up, I used to actually go with her on her trips to the slum areas. And, you know, she used to educate them on nutrition and a lot of preventive health. And then my dad was an engineer, so typical Indian family here. And, you know, really they brought us to America, one, because of extended family, and also really the major reason was for educational opportunities and the American dream. And so, when I actually remember the day I moved here. It was November 18th, 2000. And me and my brother, we were so excited, like, oh, we're going to America. Like everyone in the school, we were going around like announcing it. And you come in as a 10-year-old, you have a completely fantasized vision of what America is going to be. And I remember, my parents are very, I guess, of the thought of being independent and try to do everything on your own until you really need the help, especially my dad. And he didn't tell us that we wouldn't be staying with our extended family, but we were just going to be on our own from day one. So I remember coming off the plane, and we go to this basement, and my dad's like, okay, so this is where we're gonna live. And I remember looking at my brother like, this is not what I imagined. But some of the best moments I've had in my childhood were in that home. Living close knit in a 1-bedroom basement, essentially. You grow close to your family, and really we've uplifted each other during a lot of dark times. And I think they've been the reason I am here. So I think that plays a big role. And I always knew I wanted to be a physician. It was either going to be a physician, and maybe my mom had to do a lot with that influence, or be an interior designer. So I was like, well, I could do the other one on the side as a hobby, and then make this a career. So that kind of, was the beginning of my journey in America. And honestly, the first few years were tough. I did know English because I went to a Catholic boarding school in India when I was younger. But it's still, it's not enough. You come here, there's a lot of biases that you face from other people of what their view is because you're an immigrant. And, just fighting that and not letting that get you down. I think that was a big struggle that I faced personally. And, I think it's shown me that you really can't let other people bring you down. You just kind of have to do your job and do it right, and not worry about the rest. And that's been my guiding principle in life. And, I hope it takes me more further in life. So,
I live in New Hyde Park, which has a very large Indian population, and because of my background, which is, as you said, it is what leans on, I respect an immigrant coming to this country and the difficulty of it, because I remember seeing my parents. I'm the one who used to be the spokesperson because I spoke English as a kid, like less than 10 years old. So I understand what that feels like. And I think it's a two-way street. I think people in this country have to try to learn a little more about the Indian culture and the people, and what makes everybody tick. And then ultimately it meshes because the younger generation, like you, are more in the community, if you will. And it's a slow process, unfortunately, and there are some people that do make it a little more difficult than it should be. Um, my view is, and this has definitely got nothing to do with dermatology, is that everybody I see that lives in my town over here, all they want to do is just like everybody else, just have a nice life with their family, have a decent home, which they all take very good care of. So what's the problem? I don't get it. You know. Anyhow,
yeah.
that has nothing to do with dermatology, but
Well, it's actually it does in a way. I mean, it's her story because your bio is so rich, and I have a question I'm dying to ask you. How proud are your parents of you?
Oh, my mom cried at my med school graduation.
I'm sure.
So
Christina and I are texting each other. We're crying right now,
I
listening to your
I was
story.
like, I think I need to stop sharing a little more because I feel like otherwise tears are gonna start coming. So, it's so funny. I've probably shared this story about myself to just many like friends and throughout the years in my life, and
Yeah.
other people I've met, colleagues, and it it's emotional every time I talk about it because it's so vivid in my life. And people, you tend to forget parts of your childhood, but when you go through such an experience together, it's imprinted forever. I always say, um, it's just amazing. And even now, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wonder where we would have been. Just recently, I was asking my mom, like, I wonder how, like, where we would have been if we didn't go through this. And she's like, you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't go through that hardship and you didn't
Right.
grow from it.
Right.
And so, I think that it's really amazing. And I think Otto, the other thing is, you mentioned your parents came, and being able to move at that age, I think what's incredible is, as children, we're pretty resilient, but, as adults, to shift your entire life, move to another country. My mom actually tried to apply for residency here. She tried for 5 years straight in a row, and it's hard, having graduated 20 years ago, have to study again, and raise two kids and work and make the house run. And then 9/11 happened shortly after, and a lot of factories shut down, so my dad couldn't find the right job. My brother was working full-time in high school. Like, he would go to work after high school, and we all kind of started working at a young age. So you really learn the value of money, and it's of hard work. And as long as you work hard, the results come in at the end. So I always say that to people I mentor today. It can be frustrating, it can be a long journey, but it is worth it at the end.
Thank you so much for sharing and being so candid. Because it is, you are this successful dermatologist, professor, and all these awards, and that's what we see when we see you. But everybody has a story, and this is, your journey is just amazing. And I'm just feeling like how your parents just must be so filled with proud, how strong you are. So I'm verklempt, which is a Yiddish term for you and your parents, and I'm so really just really grateful that you shared that story. And it kind of helps for people to understand that not everybody who is a doctor comes from this easy path, that it's just so natural, and this is what we do, this is how we get there, this is the grades you need, this is really a beautiful story. And again, we thank you so much for sharing. And so I guess we got to talk about skin, right? We're here. It's I guess there's some kind of, I could go on and just talk about you, if that's okay, or do we want to kind of focus on a little bit about skin? So I'm curious to just kind of like to preempt it. What do you think brought your interest to dermatology, or the whole kind of skin aspect?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I never thought I wanted to be a dermatologist. I went to medical school, and a little more to my background. So when I was younger, I lived with my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, dementia. So I saw my parents, take care of her, and just like take what a toll it can take on someone just having that disease. And that was a reason I went into medicine and neuroscience. So if you look at my background, I was a psychology major, behavioral neuroscience concentration, went into medical school thinking I wanted to be a neurologist. And then, third year of medical school, which is when we kind of go through the clinical rotations, still then I was kind of one of those students who loved every rotation, except a few, and still couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And I did a dermatology elective. So it's not a main core rotation. It's just, you can pick to do it as an elective just to learn about the skin. And, I was just like, hold on, I'm having a life crisis. Like, what I planned for my entire life, I'm not sure that's what I want to do. I want to do dermatology. Because, I think that when someone who doesn't know much about the field, you just see what's on the outside. So I feel like the cosmetics of dermatology is very mainstream, and people think that's all we do as a dermatologist. But I feel like there's so much more to dermatology that's not talked about until you really live it or experience it. And, I saw a lot of patients and suffering from various skin conditions, it taking a toll on their self-esteem. And it really kind of brought me back to my days as an immigrant, and the ways things, and again, outer appearance, things you wore, how you dressed, how you put your hair up, things that people noticed and, I got made fun of. And I thought, wow, the skin is the largest organ of our body. And when someone's, covered in psoriasis or eczema or has dry, scaly skin, it can really impact their life. It's not just about, looking young or, feeling radiant. I think there's a lot more to that than just what looks cosmetically well. And I think it had a really good mixture of everything I liked in medicine. You get the follow-ups, you really build relationships with your patients in the long term. I get to do surgeries, I get to cut out skin cancers, I get to see a lot of medicine. I think people's medical history contributes a lot to their skin. So in general, I think it's a very comprehensive field. And the skin really manifests internal disease. So I just felt like it had everything I was looking for. And I'm really glad I made that decision and, decided last minute that I'm not going to be a neurologist, but I'm going to go into dermatology. And it was worth the change in my career, in my trajectory.
Right, right. What an interesting comparison, you brought up too, is that, people kind of judge you for the outside because they don't understand, and how similar that is, with skin, because you don't know what's going on underneath, but everything has a story. So that's really really very interesting. You're such an interesting doctor, Shah. You have your background in education and your life, and I don't know. I think you should have your own podcast. Do you have your own podcast?
No, I don't, but I actually haven't. I started an Instagram page this year, actually, on New Year's. I remember feeling like, there's not enough of us out there talking about the non-mainstream parts of dermatology.
Right.
And it inspired it, but let's just say social media is not easy. So
No,
I commend
no.
all of you out there
There.
doing it.
Wonderful. We're going to take a very quick break. You're listening to Project Independence and You, Community Talk Radio, and we'll be back with Dr. Shah in just a minute.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You, Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. I'm Rebecca Miller along with Otto Lohse and Christina Liu, also Dan Cox. And we've been speaking to Dr. Pooja Shah about skin health for seniors, however, more about her bio and what brought her into this field and her coming to America and, her experiences here and how she's excelled and all of her accomplishments. So we became a little more friendly with Dr. Shah, and we're so glad she's here. I know Otto has a bunch of questions, and
Well, I have one major question. All right, how far is the sun from the Earth?
Oh, wow. That is a question I'm going to have to Google now because I don't know. Right.
Well, I have the answer.
okay.
48 million miles.
48
You realize
million
how
miles.
powerful it must be if it can damage your skin from
From 48.
48 million miles away. I mean, to me, that is completely mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. Give a million, take a million. It's either 47 or 48 million. But that to me, and yet it still causes all kinds of skin damage.
Right.
I just found out doing research for this show. I said, that's an interesting thought.
That's a good fact.
And it really is. How does it do so much damage when it's so far away?
Well, it's the UV rays,
Yeah.
it's always cumulative sun damage. It's never, I think that's actually interesting because a lot of my patients, especially out in Huntington, they say, oh, like, yeah, I wear sunscreen when I'm at the beach, but I don't put it on when I'm just walking to the car or it's cloudy or it's raining, I don't need the sunscreen then. And I think that's one thing that I, want to make sure we get through this show is, it is really important to use sun protection all year round, whether it's raining, it's cloudy, it's sunny, the rays are coming through. And, you know, now even more because we don't have that protective, you know, we're losing that ozone layer year by year. And it's, you know, the damage has gotten worse every year. I mean, you know, and then the other thing is, you know, darker skin tone patients say, well, you know, I have the melanin to protect me. But I'll speak of my own example. So I went to Rochester, upstate New York, for medical school and residency. And when I first moved from India, you know, I could sit in the sun for hours, never feel a thing. After having lived here, and I don't know if it's also the environment change, but if I'm sitting out in the sun for even half an hour, my neck will start burning. You won't see the redness on me, but I can feel the burn. So, you know, the damage is happening. You know, I always say, even when you get a tan, it is changing the DNA of your skin. So that cumulative exposure just from walking to your car for 5 minutes over the years, it can predispose you, especially if you have the genes that predispose you to skin cancer, and then, you know, other risk factors like, you know, if you're immunosuppressed or are on chemotherapy medications, certain medications can make you more prone to getting a skin cancer. So, you know, it's just important to remember to wear sun protection all year round.
So
No,
there's
that's a subject.
so many options. One second, Otto. There's so many options for skin protection. You know, there's broad spectrum. There's it's like going down the cereal aisle. I don't know what to get. You know, the bottles that look more appealing. How, you know, even for my head, like someone like me, when I go for my checks, they look so closely at my scalp, you know, and I'm like, should I be putting it in my hair? Do they even make conditioner or shampoo with broad spectrum sunscreen?
Not that I know of, but I think
You
that
might have a product there. Yeah.
yeah, so that is true. I think, you know, there's always that also in the media, you know, is sunscreen safe for you? Is it not safe for you? There's all these theories that come out. I think overall, the sunscreens are safe for you. You know, if you're worried about the damage it can do to the environment, the ecosystem, then maybe, you know, go for the physical sunscreens rather than the chemical sunscreens. So physical sunscreens are more zinc oxide based or titanium dioxide. And then the chemical sunscreens are the ones with the avobenzones and oxybenzones. Those tend to blend in a little better. But to be honest, now there's so many physical sunscreens that they have like micronized zinc. So even someone like me, I put it on, and as long as you rub it in properly, you don't see the white cast.
Right.
So I think that when you're looking for a sunscreen, you do not need to go for the most expensive brand. So I always say skincare does not need to be expensive. Any brand is okay as long as one, you're going to use it. It has to say broadband, so protection against UVA and UVB. And it should be SPF 30 or higher. You know, beyond SPF 50, it really doesn't add much more protection. So I'd say 30 to 50 is probably a good number. And it should say UVA, UVB protection or broadband protection.
The difference between UVA and UVB?
So UVB is really the component of sun that contributes to more you know, immediate sunburns, and UVA is the one that kind of contributes to aging, wrinkles. They both can contribute to skin cancer formation, but it's the UVB that's considered to be more kind of that component that contributes to that immediate sun damage, and then the UVA is, you know, hits deeper in the skin, which leads to wrinkles and, you know, accelerated aging. So more the reason to wear sun protection is
right. And one more question, and then I know Otto has a question. So there's a lot of makeups that might have sunscreen in them, foundations, blush, lip stuff. I mean, are those all like doing the same kind of protection?
Yes. So as far as I know, most makeups have SPF 15. I still think that's better than nothing.
Right. Okay.
And you know, at the beach, most of us are having too much fun to reapply. I think if we can reapply every 2 hours or so, that is optimal. Or reapply if you're coming out of the water, you're sweating a lot, you know, then you probably need to reapply more often. Okay. And then for those of us who forget to reapply, getting sun protective clothing. So they make SPF t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, hats, wide brimmed hats. I think sun protective clothing, especially if you're not good about reapplying and carrying your sunscreen everywhere, then
Or the kids.
exactly.
Yeah.
I have been using, because of a very bad history of skin problems, daily moisturizer for a long time, which does have SPF 30 and broad spectrum in it. Um, and I learned the hard way, unfortunately. I've gone through several Mohs surgeries,
Oh.
one of which was 5 layers down.
Ooh.
So it was an all-day affair. Uh, and I'm going to make one editorial comment to any senior. If you see anything that doesn't look right, don't wait. And like another topic is, you read about all these great skin repair products that are advertised that'll fix everything. Uh, Forget that, in my opinion. It doesn't fix everything. It's a marketing game. It may help upon occasion. I'm not, but for the most part, I think it's very important to detect anything that looks shaky early, so you don't end up like me with several Mohs surgeries that you could do without. I think you can prevent that by early action, if you will. But anyhow, that's editorial comment.
Well, Otto, why don't you share a little bit about your history with the sun? Because it was kind of before we knew a lot about the dangers. Because
Well, I go back to a long time ago, all right? I'm 86. I was in the sun all my life, basically. When I was a kid, I loved the water. I loved the beach. I played baseball every day. I was always out in the sun. I got into golf even back then. So I was always outside. Then I got stationed in Cuba when I was in the Navy, which really put the hammer down. Uh, the sun there is brutal, but I had a great tan. Everybody said, "Oh, what a great tan you have." Uh, Now, I disregarded a lot of the bubbles that came from the blistering and whatnot during that process, uh, which people did in those days. You just stick a little pin in it and the water would come out of the bubble, and that would be the end of it. Uh, Little did we know, that this was going to be. Uh, I tell my grandchildren now and my children, I told them 100 times, I said, look at this face. It didn't always look like that. And do what you can now to protect yourself from the sun. And then when you get older, you still have to battle it. The damage that was done, you really have to go to somebody like you before it becomes a big problem. Like waited, I had this, one of the skin repair products was going to fix all this, and it didn't work. So I think it's very critical. If you see anything that looks a little shaky, go get it fixed, get it taken care of.
Yeah, I
Anyhow,
no, Otto, I think you have a great point. I think early detection is key. So, May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, if you didn't already know. So this is perfect for today's show. I do think that a lot of times, Otto, you're like the perfect Long Island patient of mine. So, everyone comes in, oh, I used to sit out there with the reflectors and lay out on the beach for hours and hours. It's I call it the ugly duckling sign. A lot of us have lots of things on our skin, and it's hard to know, like, is this new? Did this change? I can't tell if the borders change. And, they always talk about the ABCDE of monitoring your moles. A for asymmetry, B for border, C for color, D for diameter or change in size, and then E for evolution. I think the E is probably the most important part of it. But really, you're looking for the ugly duckling sign. When you're doing your kind of, common man's check of your skin, of course, come see your dermatologist once a year for your skin checks, or maybe even more frequently for someone like Otto. But when you really should be doing monthly skin checks at home. Look for that ugly duckling sign. Does something stand out? Does it look different than the background spots that I have? And that might be one sign for coming into the doctor sooner than later. And then another thing is, if you have an acne bump that hasn't healed at all and it's been over a month, or just like a pink bump not healing, that's a potential sign of a skin cancer. So that's just something, I think those two little tricks I would say I tell all my patients to look out for. so they can address it before it becomes something that needs a lot more treatment.
You know, I've had it like where the skin peels off and you say, okay, it'll peel off and it'll be all right once it peels off. And then maybe 6 months later, it peels off again.
Hmm.
Wait a minute.
Well, I'm glad you're getting your checks. So another thing that Otto brought up is you're talking about your patients, and you know you are an assistant professor, but also you have a private practice.
It's not a private practice. I work for Northwell Health.
Okay.
So I work with the residents part of the time at the New Hyde Park office, and then I work out in Huntington, which I'm on my own, but it's still part of the main Northwell Health system.
Northwell,
So
okay.
it's not my private practice. Yeah.
So if any of our listeners wanted to set up an appointment with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So they can definitely reach out to either office. I can actually provide that information. Do you want to give it now or? Okay,
Sure.
so the Huntington phone number is 631-421-4188. And then hold on.
Sure. And the other thing is, if any of our listeners, they can always call 311, and Christina or I will be able to get them those numbers. So if you can't find it right now, we'll definitely get it to them. But you know, by calling 311, they'll eventually get what they need.
Yeah, or you can just look up my name on the on Google and look up Northwell Dermatology, and you can make an online appointment through there or call one of the numbers on there.
Okay, great. So
Also from experience, I'm sorry, but it's important to have a good relationship with your dermatologist, in my opinion, where you can have open conversation, which I definitely feel you could definitely do with Dr. Shah. So I think that's important, being able to communicate.
I agree. Thanks, Otto.
definitely. So of course, most of our listeners and the people that are going to watch this on North Hempstead Television or wherever they access this show are going to, for the most part, be seniors. So we do like to talk a lot about you're never too old to change to take care of yourself. Are there different things that we should do? I know you talk a lot about moisturizers, and I like what you said, that it doesn't have to be the most expensive. It just like, are there certain things that things must, it must contain, and I know everything always comes back to staying hydrated. So what are some of like recommendations that are kind of good, just general recommendations as we get older for our skincare?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things is that to know is as we get older, our skin actually gets more dry and it's not able to retain the moisture as well as before. So, people say, oh, but I'm always drinking water. Like, why is my skin still dry? It's not just about staying hydrated on the by drinking water, but you have to hydrate on the outside with a good emollient. So I always say, you come out, you try to avoid hot showers. So take lukewarm or just cooler showers. You come out of your shower, keep your skin damp, and then you put a thick cream on over that damp skin. So it kind of retains that moisture and it lasts longer. And creams are better than lotions. They're thicker and they tend to retain the moisture better. And some people need to moisturize more than once a day. So I do find that as we get older, I think moisturizing twice a day would be ideal. But life gets in the way. So at least if you get that good cream on after the shower, that's a good way to kind of get your day going.
The other thing I did want to ask, just because I'm very into moisture, scented lotions. Like, should we stay away from them?
Yes. So in general, majority of times people use scented lotions and they're fine. However, the problem, what happens is sometimes, even if you've used a product for a long time, let's say you have a cut on your skin and you're exposed to that scent, based on what's going on with your skin at the time or what's going on with your body, how sensitive it is, sometimes you can get sensitized to that product that you've been using for a long time. And that same product that didn't irritate you before can actually irritate your skin and cause what I call contact or irritant dermatitis. So avoiding scented, fragrant, these bath and body products that smell great, but they're really not the greatest for your skin. you really want to stick to fragrant free. And there's some brands that are just really good for sensitive skin. For example, Cetaphil, CeraVe. My personal favorite is La Roche-Posay. Eucerin, Vaseline, of course. Petroleum jelly is the cheapest moisturizer you can find. So I think those are some good things to just keep in mind.
I use Eucerin
I do too. Or
daily
Lubriderm.
moisturizer.
One of the things you said, and I think is extremely important, and we'll get back to, because we do have to take a quick break. So I'm not going to say it now, but when we come back, I will, because it does involve a safety issue. So this is a cliffhanger. We will be right back with Dr. Shah, Project Independence in You Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be back in just a moment.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
And welcome back to Project Independence in You Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. I'm Rebecca Miller, along with our team, Otto Lohse, Christina Liu, and Dan Cox. And we're lucky enough to be speaking with Dr. Pooja Shah all about her life early on. We were talking about her history here, and then a lot about sun damage and protection. And then we got a little bit into moisture. And before we get to Otto's next group of questions, something you said, which I don't know, just really kind of sat with me, because I've experienced it, is oil in your shower or bathtub is such a bad idea, and you can fall. I mean, it's so slippery, and because I use a lot of oil, I use a lot of moisturizer, but I stopped applying it in the shower, because that's what I'll do. I'll put on my lotions and things like that. Because then, one day I had this thought, I'm like, wow, it was a little slippery and I'm leaving. And then what if someone else goes in there after me and doesn't, slips and slides? So, if I'm correct, I think that's what your point is not to apply oil in the shower or, in your bath, because it's very slippery. And even though you might have a grab bar, it's still very hard to catch yourself in that kind of a slip. So yeah, definitely don't put oils on in the bathroom.
Yeah, I think, it's a great thought in theory, but when that slip happens, it's not worth it. So
right, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So Otto.
Well, in the beginning of the show, Dr. Shah mentioned something about, and it made me think, I'm always relating dermatology to my own world, which is sun damage, all right? But clearly there's a lot more involved than I am aware of. So maybe just a quick overview of what the highlights are that are besides sun damage. I mean, what other things are high on the list that people should be aware of, that they can do something about?
I think about my average day in the clinic. Of course, I see a lot of patients who coming for just the annual screening skin cancer checks. Patients who've had a history of skin cancer, those without a history. And then I get, the bread and butter of dermatology is what I call it. So you get acne, teenagers with acne, even adults with acne, eczema, psoriasis, which are inflammatory skin conditions. I also see, there's a lot of other rashes, which can actually can be a manifestation of skin lymphoma on the skin. So that can look like eczema, but actually are cutaneous lymphoma or skin lymphoma that they just don't respond to traditional eczema therapies. And so that's something to, think about, not as common in my day-to-day, but something to look out for when your treatments are not working to standard therapies. You got to think outside the box. And then one thing that I do see a lot of are women with vulvar disorders. So, a lot of, I guess on the senior topic, I get women and postmenopausal women who come in with lichen sclerosis, which is an inflammatory skin condition of the vulva or the labia. And you can get pretty significant scarring from uncontrolled inflammation. And, women are shy to talk about it. So often what I find is it goes undiagnosed for years, and then they find me through some forum on Facebook or social media where they, other patients who've seen me talk about it. They're from what I've heard, I've never actually seen these. There are secret groups on Facebook where lichen sclerosis support groups where women talk about, how they dealt with it and how they brought it up. So I think just, having more education and awareness of things and not shying away from owning your skin, and it's okay to have skin disease, and there are ways to manage it, but it's not something to be ashamed of. So I think that's one thing that I talk to my patients a lot of. So women's skin health also, a lot of times during my skin checks I look at the groin, and patients will say, well, that area has never seen the sun. That doesn't mean you can't get skin cancer there. So it is really important to look in every nook and cranny of your skin when you're examining yourself as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, Otto, but
No, it does. I mean, point being that if you see anything anywhere that is on your body skin part, you should really go to somebody and make sure it's, again, the early detection of any of the things you just described uh, are good. You know,
Skin's so
unfortunately, you
puzzle.
can't do anything about bags under your eyes, I don't think, or saggy arms, or
yeah.
these are all skin things. Uh,
And often your skin is the window to your internal organs. So, people with diabetes get skin manifestations or changes in their skin. People with heart disease get swelling in their legs, which can then lead to skin disease. So there's a lot of things where your overall health can affect your skin. And, another thing on the hormonal route, for example, hormonal changes during your menses, or even postmenopausal women can get hormonal cystic acne where they get once a month breakouts. So it is really reflecting on your inner state. So I think that, in addition to taking care of your skin, it's really important to take care of your overall health, both physical and mental. Eating healthy, plants, increasing the plant-based diet in your regimen, increased antioxidant rich foods, exercise, increased blood flow to your skin. All of these things do contribute to, healthy skin.
Right. I find that so many times. I have an uncle who just has been through a lot. He had corneal transplant, which very successful, very, very successful. And during COVID, he had to have all, he's taking the anti-rejection medication, and he started getting the most puzzling rashes. And because his skin's thin, he would scratch, and that would bring up the broken blood vessels, and he just looked like a disaster. And it was to this day, they still don't really know what it is. So skin can also be very puzzling. I'm sure you've come into cases where it's just like, we don't know, everything comes up right, yet you have these kind of rashes or skin conditions. Do you come across that in your own practice?
I do actually. Just this week, I had a patient who, a lot of times I tell patients it can be very frustrating because in today's world, everything's like very quick at your fingertips. We're all looking for the answers at the right now. And sometimes our body can be very challenging, and it takes time to really manifest what it's trying to tell us. And that requires follow-up. And sometimes I may be wrong. I may see something, and today I might think this is what it looks like. But as it evolves, it reveals more information, which helps us decide, okay, wait a second. We're all biased by our quick thinking, I think. We all use heuristics to make decisions in life. And that also comes up in medical decision making. Pattern recognition, that's a big part of how we practice as dermatologists. So I think these heuristics that we use in our day-to-day decision making sometimes doesn't always get us to the right answer. And that's why I always say, when you have complex things going, I see those patients more frequently, so I can see how things are evolving. I take photos in their chart. And that helps me kind of see, okay, wait, so, a week ago it looked like this, now it's looking like this. This is what changed in your history. This is the new medication you started. So all of those things, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that help us figure out what's going on. And it doesn't always happen on the first visit.
Right. Like you were saying, when you see something on the skin, the first thing we think, okay, well, we go to the dermatologist. And then you're saying, well, this may take an allergist or an endocrinologist because it's telling you a story, but,
Right.
it's not really there yet because right now it's only manifesting as perhaps, a skin rash, and then it changes. And, and that's kind of what happened to my uncle. And now he's on those, I forget the medication. It's always on the new, commercials. It gets a shot every couple of months or something. But and that helps. And it's still, when they're not really 100% sure what caused it, they're thinking maybe anti-rejection or the eye drops that he has to be on for the rest of his life. So they don't really know. But together with all of the different specialists he's seen, they did come up with a plan.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned swollen ankles, and I know somebody who talks about swollen ankles, but they also have a rash or an itch that appears to go along with that. So now all of a sudden you're in the waters of a cardiologist, perhaps, and a dermatologist.
Right.
There's a slippery slope there, and as you pointed out, the diagnosis, even though Dr. Google may make it sound simple, it really isn't always simple. And I
Right.
think that's where open communication between the doctors and
Right.
the patient are critical, because if you don't have that, if you're counting on the doctor to read your mind, then you might as well, I've said this 100 times, go to a veterinarian who's used to dealing with people that can't talk to them. Yeah.
I think that's one thing I always tell patients, I could do everything possible in my power to help you, but I do think this positive thinking and having that trust in your doctor and vice versa is so key. It's really important in helping getting rid of the issue that's going on. When you have a lot of negativity about what you're dealing with, I think it's very hard to then fix the problem, even if you're using all the right things. There's so much about the power of positive thinking. And, sometimes it's like, well, like, does it really work? But I really do think it does work, you really have to believe and have trust in the process. And I do, for example, all my teenagers I get with acne, they're like, I want this to be clear tomorrow. And I'm like, look, you're going to hate me for the first 2-3 months, but I promise you at 3 to 4 months, you will be happy with the progress. And having that expectation and having, the patience for that progress, it's so important.
Mm.
And one of the other things I think for my senior patients is having I have some patients who come in with like a little timeline of like, this is when the rash started. This is when I started a new medication. And it helps so much when I have that with me, compared to someone who's like, well, I think I started this, but then this, and then we're going around in circles and we don't get anywhere. So, keeping organized in your thoughts and in your medication list, and for especially when, you have a lot of other things going on, other medical problems you're dealing with, that is something that can help your dermatologist help you as well with complex skin conditions.
See, Otto, you're doing it right because Otto keeps lists of everything. So he could tell you
Well,
dates and times.
I grew up in an era where a lot of people were afraid to talk to their doctor. What the doctor said was gospel. That was it. And I was never in that camp because, as I pointed out earlier, my father and mother both had issues when they were younger. My father had cancer at a very early age, and I ended up being the spokesperson with the doctor at 20 years old. Um, Why? Because I could speak the language better and, all of the above. So I learned the hard way that preparation and input is mandatory, when you deal with a doctor, no matter what doctor, dermatologist or anybody. You have to be honest, and hopefully you establish an honest relationship with the doctor being honest with you, so you understand what's really going on.
Right.
It's good to have an advocate. So that was, I mean, even at 20 years old, Otto, and you know, you were able to communicate a little bit easier with the doctor because of language barriers and things like that. So do you, when you see older patients, do you ever recommend that maybe they bring somebody with them, or do you offer notes? Because you seem very empathetic to your patients. So I'm wondering what your, what you offer them in terms of that.
So it's so funny, a lot of my older patients, I'll be saying, okay, well, this is the plan. This is what you have. And they're just like nodding away, like, okay, doc, got it, got it. And
Right.
and then I'm like, did you really get it though? It's like, I feel like you heard one word I said. So I always write it down. When I get the sense that, they just have like a huge medication list, there's a high chance something's going to get forgotten or confused. So I always tend to write it down. And it is incredible. I do see a lot of older patients coming in with their kids, which it's amazing. I'm so happy when I see that, that someone's there to advocate for them and really keep an eye on their health and help them kind of navigate through that. So, at having of my dad, he's 75, maybe now 76. I see how he's changed too in the last 5 or 10 years. Things that he used to be really on top of, aren't, they just get forgotten, even though that he's trying very hard. So I think having someone to advocate for you, so, especially anyone who's the kid of an older parent, take that extra time. And at least if you can't make it to the appointment, get on the phone while the doctor's going over the plan. And I think that can really save a lot of confusion and make things less stressful for the seniors.
That's great. And
guys, I just want to chime in quickly because I just got this, and this ties in perfectly because North Hempstead is actually partnering with North Shore University Hospital and Long Island Jewish Medical Center to do a whole kind of sunscreen program. And I just thought it would be a perfect time to let people know that at so many different parks within North Hempstead, there's SPF 30 sunscreen residents available, and they're free. There's free dispensers all over the parks. I mean, there's such a list throughout the town. And there's also going to be Wellness Wednesday programs. And on July 12th at Clinton G. Martin Park, which is over in New Hyde Park, you can get a free skin cancer screening. It's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., first come, first serve. So I just thought it was a perfect little partnership that we have going on between the town and North Shore University Hospital to really spread the word on this. So I think that was great.
One of the many partnerships we have with with Northwell. So it's, I know we're coming close to the end of these segments with you, Dr. Shah. I mean, it's so great to have you on. Is there anything else that you'd want to share in a quick minute? I mean, not all older people need an advocate, but it's even at any age, it's good to have somebody come with you, especially if you're getting information that may not be, fun to hear. So it's good to have somebody come with you anyway. But, it's just been so great to have you on. Any last minute thoughts or anything you want to share? Because I guarantee Christina is going to have you back, and we'll also have you speaking at many of our chats. So you are now a Project Independence ambassador, just to let you know.
No, it's been really fun chatting with all three of you. I think that, one, thank you for having me and having the opportunity to share that, just about skin health in general. I think that it's never too late to take care of your skin. So, regardless of the damage you might have done back in the day, it's never too late to start. We forget how resilient our bodies are, and really that, healthy eating, good skincare, good mental health care, and just taking care of your overall health, go to your doctors. I think it's a good reminder for me as well. I literally have had it on my to-do list to go to my primary care, and I haven't made it out there, so I'm going to call them right after this.
Okay, good.
I think it's just good to take care of yourself, and, I'm happy to be there as a resource for your skin needs. And anything else, you can always find me on Northwell's website.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for giving us an hour of your time. We are grateful. And like I said, I know that you'll be around, and if we'd love to use you as a resource. There's a lot more questions, a lot more, I'm sure, stories that Otto wants to share too. Right
one
now,
final plug. I actually have been doing some skin related, videos and pearls on Instagram. I don't know how many of you listeners are on Instagram, but it's The Mindful Dermatologist. So feel free to find me on there, and we can always chat more through that channel as well.
You're listening to Project Independence in You. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah.
Thank you.